Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the show. The Atheist Experience is live June 15th, 2003. I'm your host, Martin Wagner. Ashley Perrien, my co-host. And our guest on the air today is Andy Roberts.
Hi.
Member of our crew who just decided she couldn't hold back anymore and wanted to come on the show and
play with callers.
Yeah, and hey, no problem. That'll be fun. Show is sponsored, as always, by Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. at Hot Jumbo Bagels, which is located downtown at 307 West 5th Street between Guadalupe and Lavaca, except for the first Sunday of each month when we have our lecture series in the Longhorn Room of First Cafeteria in North Cross Mall. And if you check our website at atheist-community.org and you go to the upcoming calendar of events page, you'll be able to see who our next caller is. I can't remember her name. I haven't got it written down. My bad.
I want to say Melinda Bagley, I think.
I think it's something like that, yeah. But she's... but it's listed there and her topic, and so it should be very, very interesting. As always. Okay, let's see. Okay, various ACA social activities include Godless Gamers, which is every Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. at Russell and Virginia Glasser's house, and ACA Happy Hour, which is a Thursday evening event. Starts about 7:30. People trickle in all night long, though. Look for the table that has the little Darwin fish sign on it. And that is at Antonio's Tex-Mex, which is at the intersection of Highway 183 and I-35, or near that. It's kind of by the Applebee's and all the rest of that. So yummy food and good times. The nonprofits. Our bi-weekly internet radio show, which is back on the air and has finally hit its stride once again in its second season, is back. It's at atheistnetwork.com website at 2 in the afternoons. And it's every other Saturday, and their next episode will be this coming Saturday. Jeff D. and Vic Farrow and Russell Glasser and whoever else they can Shanghai and rope in to join in the fun. There's an interactive chat room feature that runs concurrently with the show. And past episodes of Nonprofits, once they're broadcast, are also archived in MP3 format on our website at the radio show page. You can get about the last dozen or so on there. So looking forward to that. That'll be next Saturday, episode 4, season 2, Nonprofits, live on your computer. And University Atheists and Agnostics, a registered student, UT student organization, started up by Charles Tabany, and Andy's involved. It's going to be, they're taking the summer off, and they will be starting up again, though, in the fall. And I assume you guys are going to have, officer elections?
I don't know. I'm graduating in August, so I'm not going to be a part of that anymore.
Rocking. Okay, well, good for you. But but there will still be people involved, and presumably Charles and Crystal and the gang. So I guess they'll have, as soon as we know when their meetings are for the new semester, we'll put that up. Okay, and uaa.mail.utexas.edu. I'm sorry, that's the email address to talk to Charles if you're a UT student or faculty. Okay, that does it for the announcements. If you'd like to find out more about our fine organization, go to atheist-community.org. That's our webpage. And you can learn a little bit more about us. And if you've never seen this show before, the show's been on now for about 5 years. On every week, we're a live call-in show. We take calls from folks like yourself who want to chat with atheists or, don't know what atheism is. Might be a little surprised to see a show like this on the air. That's cool. We'd like to talk to you. However, on that website that I just mentioned, which is right above my head, we have a FAQ page, frequently asked questions. Questions that we've assembled over 5 years of doing this show and taking calls from Christians and other believers. The most common question, what is atheism? What's the difference between being an atheist and being an agnostic? What do atheists think about this or that or the other thing? Well, there's a fact page on our website right there, and so maybe we've already answered your question. But if not, call us up anyway. So all kinds of fun. And there is, for people who try to call in and don't get through, or who don't want to call us and just want to talk to us anyway, whatever the reason, we have our viewer email address, TV feedback, which is tv@atheist-community.org. Every week, if we get a really cool letter, read it out on the air, respond to it on the air, but everything gets answered all the same, and we also have the TV viewer email feedback section on the website, part of which is part of the TV show section of the website, on which recently I had a very interesting discussion, a thread, this email thread, with a guy named James Nienhuis, I guess is going to be how you, or Nienhuis, or is Nienhuis is his last name. This guy sent an email to that address right there. And essentially he is a young Earth creationist. Now, a young Earth creationist, as you don't know, these are the people who take a very, very, very literal interpretation of Scripture. Like the Earth was created on like a Wednesday, June the something of the year 4004 BC, like a strict 6,000 year age of the Earth. Yeah. And he just sent us completely out of the blue, right? This lengthy tract, as it were. And I was in a playful mood that day, so I replied. And it turned into this long exchange, right, where this guy just refused to back up his points, okay? And he refused to respond to actual scientific information I was sending him. And like I would send him this long refutation of some of the points that he made. They're very, long-winded as I usually am, right? And then I would send him links to fact pages on talkorigins.org and various other scientific resources on the web. And he would write me back like 5 minutes later. And he says, boy, you read that fact mighty quick, didn't you? You're basically saying, yes, well, I've read all that, and you're just, you're an intellectual shut-in. That's why you don't want to, typical of the behavior of, crackpots, right? It's like they've got it all right, and and if you won't listen to them, that means that, that just proves they're right.
You're a poop head.
Yeah. It wasn't quite that unsophisticated, but it was just about that. Close. It was just about that petulant, though. I mean, he just got more and more petulant, and the exchange finally ended with him more or less conceding that his whole approach is nothing about science in the first place. Yeah. It just wasn't about science after all, because he finally wrapped it all up. And you can read this. If you go to the website, you go to TV Viewer email, I think he's on page 2. This whole lengthy exchange I had with this guy, and he finally wrapped it up by saying, well, I've tried to reach your cold, hard heart for the love of Jesus, but you won't respond. Well, I pity you, da-da-da, and this whole kind of, it's like, okay, why'd you just admit that all you were trying to do was convert me to Christianity in the first place? So that was a few weeks ago. Thought we'd heard the last of this guy. So I turn up today, right, and Ashley hands me This is the book that the fellow, Mr. James Nienhuis, kept offering to send me. He said, well, I'll be happy to send you a complimentary copy of my book. And Old Earth, Why Not? Okay, and these are all of this is his little self-published, collection of treatises on why the Earth is 6,000 years old, and anybody who says it isn't is just a big doofus. And, and during our email exchange, I told him, look, until you are willing to back up the claims you make, a self-published book does not impress me. I'm not really any more interested in reading this book, than I would be in a book about Atlantis, or sea monsters, or UFOs, or Bigfoot, or what have you, right? The way science is done, there are processes involved, right? Science is a very rigorous investigative process. Yeah. And it's that way for a reason, and it's all about, there's things like peer review, which this guy completely turns up his nose at. He's like, the big conspiracy, right? Yeah, exactly. Publish your findings in a peer-reviewed journal. That's one way. So that other people in the field, other professional scientists, like people who make their living doing this stuff, can check your claims and then independently test them and see if they hold up. That's the self-correcting procedure. That science, or one of the, but science is known. Science, in fact, is distinguishable from religion, right? In that it has this process in place for finding and correcting mistakes. Yeah. Religion doesn't have that. Religion just hands you dogmas that you're not allowed to question no matter what the evidence says. And science is all about, let's find out where we're wrong about this. Yeah. It's a complete flip-flop of methodology. Yeah. So, but guys like him seem to think, look, all they have to do is throw up a website and self-publish a book. And poof, there goes 150 years of science.
All scientists will just bow down at their feet and admit, my God, how could I have been
when
wrong?
You're holding that up, I just noticed something. On the back, this says nonfiction. That's probably why he self-published it. No one else would publish it as nonfiction.
that could be the case. I have gone to like some local, there's a local there's a local used bookstore. We're not allowed to do anything that could be resembling promoting or anything, but so I'll just say, and they have I've noticed that they have put books by guys like Zecharia Sitchin, who is one of these a pseudoscientist who takes ancient scriptures and tries to say that, oh, well, space aliens.
Yes.
And the gullible publishers, you'd be surprised, actually, Andy. I mean, major publishers were the people out there promoting Eric von Däniken back in the 70s and all the Bigfoot stuff. The way publishers work is if they think it'll sell, they'll publish it.
Yeah.
And if they think it'll sell more by giving you a book about fairies and elves and putting nonfiction on it, people go, ooh, it's true. If that's what it'll take to sell the book, they'll do that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It would be nice to think that they had better ethics than that. But I've noticed that they'll take books. This one store will take books by guys like Sitchin and Immanuel Velikovsky and all these, and they'll put them in science fiction. Even though they're published and says on the site it says, even though the book itself says nonfiction on it, it's like somebody there at that store knows what he's doing. He's like, put that right where it belongs here. Just put it next to The Hobbit. That's where it belongs. Right?
Or mythology.
Yep. So anyway, this fellow he sent me his book, even though I kind of thought that we'd heard the last of him, but of course he wants to keep it going fine, and he sent me a letter. And he's very serious about this. He's got this printed letterhead and all the rest of it. Dear Martin, we emailed back and forth a few weeks ago. Yeah, we did, didn't we? I hope you take the time to read my book. Okay, James, well, I'll bite. I'll read a bit of it, but I can tell you, if any of the rest of it is like the structure of it, each chapter is like...
Structure? There's structure?
It's like here's a chapter that's 3 pages.
Yeah.
In 3 pages, he presumes to refute the claim that dinosaur fossils are millions of years old. In 3 pages.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I actually looked at it. The book is 189 pages. There are 25 chapters.
Yeah.
So on average, they are less than 10 pages long.
Yeah. I mean, he thinks that like just less than 10 pages, he can take a complete,
can wipe out all
complete
science.
field of scientific study. But just looking at the first chapter, where his chapter headings, basically, what he does, a lot of times I've noticed, all his chapter headings are claims that he seems to think science is making about the way the world works. And then the text of the chapter tries to refute that claim. And here, for example, he just proves right off the bat, he doesn't know what he's talking about when he goes after evolutionary biology, because according to him, what he calls Claim 13, monkeys evolved into men about 3 million years ago. Okay, and then he goes on in 4 pages to try to refute this, right? Now,
which we could do.
Evolutionary biology doesn't make that claim. Okay?
Yeah.
Evolution does not claim monkeys evolved into men. Yeah. Okay? Okay, what evolutionary biology tells us is that monkeys, as we see them today, chimps and bonobos and all the little, spider monkeys and what have you, and us, had a common ancestor on the phylogenetic tree. Okay? That's what it says. But it's all these straw man arguments. And in his first chapter, remember, this guy's a young Earth creationist. He wants to refute the claim that dinosaurs died out about 65 million years ago. And in 7 pages, the evidence that he gives, okay, to claim that humans and dinosaurs have coexisted, essentially is this collection of anecdotal evidence from
dragons.
Yeah, from like people in the Middle Ages, like Geoffrey of Monmouth. Oh, and I saw a beast flying through the, personal eyewitness accounts from people who were either not sure what they were looking at, didn't know what they were looking at, or could have been making stuff up.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another scientific axiom. Anecdotes aren't evidence of anything. So again, this is just a guy who doesn't seem to know what he's talking about. So I'm gonna read as much of this as I can stomach, and I'll respond to him. And I may put some of this up on the website just for your own comedy purposes. But but that's about enough of that. Okay, it's just fun. If you want to know if you have doubts about evolution, and that's fine. Okay, there's no theory, there's no principle in all of science that's not allowed to be challenged.
That's the purpose of science, is to challenge ideas.
Exactly. It's perfectly valid to challenge evolution. If you challenge it, though, you need to be able to back up your claims. Okay? Guys like James Ninehuis, or however you pronounce his name, can't do that. Okay? Creationists haven't been able to do that. The intelligent design crew hasn't been able to do that. But that still doesn't mean that challenging it is invalid. But if you want to know what science really has to say about evolution, go there. Okay? There's very lengthy and very detailed collection of papers explaining what science really does say. Because if you listen to creationists and try to get, if you go to them for what does science say about this, that, or the other thing, you're going to get a distortion like the distortions made in this book. You're going to get people saying, oh, well, evolution says that, You know,
we came from chimps.
Yeah, or just we just kind of crawled out, popped out of nothing or something like that. And it's just a complete misunderstanding, a complete either deliberate distortions or misunderstandings. So if you want to know what science really has to say, talk to a scientist. Well, so much for James. Let's put that over there in the place of honor on the floor. And that's about that. So Andy, happy to have you on the show.
Thanks.
And
we ought to say Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there.
I was going to do that after the days and make that the big thing, but we'll do it now.
Okay. Sorry.
Ruin the whole flow of the show.
It doesn't matter. We can do it now. It's perfectly all right.
I thought you'd probably forgotten or something.
I had, but this is no, actually, I hadn't forgotten my dad, and Happy Dad's Day to all our dads. You want to say something to your dad? Hi, Dad.
My dad's in Kuwait, or my father's in Kuwait. So.
Well, why don't you send him like a mental psychic resonance message and beam it over the sea?
I don't really care to. So.
He's in Kuwait. What's he do over there? Was he in Kuwait?
He works for a government contractor, and I have no idea what he does.
Wow.
Really,
So
other than that, so
you get frontline reports from all this stink that's been over.
I don't talk to him.
Oh, you don't? Boy, then okay. Well, gee, faux pas there, Wagner. Take two. All right, well, happy Dad's Day to Ashley.
The dads out there.
Yeah. Am I about to uncover some nasty family stuff over here? So, nah. All right, well, then that's great. Good Father's Day, hooray. That means I don't have to worry about Mother's Day or Father's Day again for another year, thank goodness. So you don't have to be like, oh no, I didn't get the card in time. So
That's what internet email cards are for.
that is true.
Yeah, those are nice.
That's very true. Yeah. Especially, the kind of raunchy ones, but you don't want to send those
True Father's Day cards.
Yeah. There you go, Dad. Right. What's happening in the world today,
Okay.
Ashley? I can just dig myself here deeper, or we can just go to the news.
Speaking of science and human evolution and biology and all those kind of fun things. News story this week. Interesting. Scientists find the oldest fossils of modern humans. These were some pieces of skulls that were actually found in Africa, northeastern Ethiopia. And it was fragments of 3 skulls of 3 different people. And these were 160,000-year-old remains. 2 adults and a child. And they are some of the oldest fossils that we have seen of modern people. Now, the interesting thing about these is that they have some interesting combinations of elements of both modern, what we see on modern skulls, and also some very old stuff. The big brow ridges are on these things, but they also have proportions of a normal, modern day skull.
Okay.
So it's got some interesting things there.
So is this then, this is an early Homo sapien, or is this something, okay.
No, this is a Homo sapien.
So it's not some other entirely different branch that we don't know anything about.
Something like that. It's Homo sapien.
Okay.
The discovery fills a temporal and geographical gap in the evolutionary record and provides new evidence for the so-called out-of-Africa theory, which holds that modern humans evolved in Africa as a single species and not as a result of interbreeding with human precursors, especially the European Neanderthals.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of the other theories. You had all these different species of humans, and they all kind of interbred, and poof, here we are.
Yeah. This pretty much kind of closes the books on the idea that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals interbred at any
Exactly.
time, right?
Exactly. Yeah. There were no connections between that they could find between this and actual Neanderthals. They could find no linkage. Instead, White said the new discoveries appeared to represent a transitional phase between early human ancestors and modern humans. These people were separated from us by 10,000 generations, White said. Yet in their faces, we see many of the features that we see in our own.
Yeah.
Which was very, very interesting. I had not thought about the actual time frame that we're dealing with here in terms of generations.
Yeah.
10,000, that's a lot less than I would have just, thought of.
But that's a long period of time, though.
Yeah. 160,000 years, apparently.
Yeah.
But still, just the number of generations, that's kind of surprising, considering you can have 5 generations alive at the same time in a single family. Sure. So that's it's not as long ago as I would have thought to actually talk about evolutionary things.
Well, I've read something on the BetterHumans.com website where some studies are indicating. Again, I wish I had more of the details with me. But there has been some research indicating that certain evolutionary processes can take place much more quickly than previously thought.
Yes, yes.
But it just all depends on exactly what aspect of it you're looking at.
Yeah.
So it's not just everything doesn't just sort of creep along at this pace.
At this glacial pace. Yeah.
Well, and I think the debate is still very active between gradualism and punctuated equilibrium.
Yeah. I think it's very possible that it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Too.
Sort of like the truth in the middle, sort of, as usually tends to be the case in situations like this. But real science, leaving guys like James in the dust. You should
send a copy of that to him.
Yeah. Just forward in that link, and you'll see what he has to say about that.
Yeah. And it was also interesting, the skulls that they actually found had marks on them that they were actually being used in some kind of mortuary ritual, ancient ritual. They had marks on the skulls. They were polished in such a way that it looks like they had been handled very, very frequently.
Really?
They actually had marks on the skulls that shows some kind of ritual was going on with them.
You mean, were these like post-mortem? Like after the people were dead, they were taking these skulls and doing stuff? Or?
That would appear to be more the case. They didn't say anything in here about evidence that they were actually, killed or something like that.
Yeah.
The skulls had just been used, had been altered after they died.
If you got to have your skull altered, that's a good time to do it. I'd rather have it done personally after.
Yeah. So exactly what the details are on that, they don't really go into in any stories I can find.
Yeah.
Just polishing of the skulls, stuff like that kind of show a lot of handling.
Yeah.
And some scratches on them.
Yeah.
So
it could be evidence of, very, very primitive forms of belief systems taking hold.
Exactly. Exactly.
Some people, there's debate about this, but some people think that like Neanderthals had belief systems because it appears that not only did they bury their dead, but they buried their dead with grave goods.
Yes, flowers and stuff like that.
Well, like their spear tips and what have you. And so like, one line of thinking is that, you don't do that unless, you think that your pal is going to need his spear in the afterlife to hunt with and what have you. And then some other archaeologists are saying, no, I mean, these people just died and they buried them so they wouldn't stink up the place. And, just whatever crap was laying around happened to just get buried. There's no real proof that there was any sort of organized ritual behavior taking place then.
But I'd argue the other way. If I was, in a situation where a buddy of mine died and he had a gun in his hand and I needed to go hunt, I'd bury him and take the gun and go hunt.
Exactly.
I don't think you need them shoes anymore.
Exactly. It's some kind of thing where you're just going to say, more of
I think that is a point made by people who are skeptical of that view. It's like, why would you bury a perfectly good weapon if someone else in the tribe could, use it? Yeah. So.
Unless you've got some kind of belief that they can use it. So.
Yes.
So, real science marches on.
It do.
Yay, science. Okay, this one in West Union, Ohio. 30 people were taken into police custody Monday after protesting the attempted removal of 10 Commandments tablets, but most released without being charged. There was one person actually arrested, though, and that was the Reverend Billy Ryan. Now, these are Ten Commandment monuments that are actually in public schools there. They
have Ten Commandment monuments in public schools?
In the schools, yes. They had a court case and said, nope, they got to go for fairly obvious reasons. And then when they're out there to actually try and get them removed, they had all the people from the church and the pastors and everybody out there protesting this. Most of them were just carted off. So apparently, I think the monuments, it's kind of strange. It says the attempted removal, but down at the bottom they say the monuments are gone and they have now a new sign in its place saying, I shall return. So they put something there. So apparently they actually were pulled down.
Yeah. Well, what do they do with them? I mean, why not just take these things, put them on some church lawn? I'm sure some church lawn would love to have the thing.
Exactly. Just transfer them next door and there you go.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Nope, they just plain old carted them away. So,
well, seeing as how that's what the Christians did a few years ago with the Freethinker Rock in Comfort, Texas.
Exactly.
Just pulled it up and, carted it away. I mean, let's see why we have to,
So.
But the fact is, right, this removal has the Constitution
exactly
to justify it. The other removal was just pure spite.
Yeah.
Again, You could take these. Why not just put these monuments in places where they are appropriate, such as someone's private land that they pay for, or a lawn of a church.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't a church want to have a nice big honking commandments?
That kind of depends. Were they bought with public funds to put them in there?
It does not say.
Yeah, that could be why they didn't just take it straight to a church if they were bought with public funds. They can't they'd have to auction it off or...
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying, though, is that to smooth over ruffled feathers, you could say, we'll forfeit this.
Yeah. Who wants to adopt them?
Yeah, we'll just plant this thing on your land and to avoid the protracted fight and, lawsuits and what have you. Yeah. Because that could be seen from their side. That'd be like adding insult to injury. We're going to take this thing there. You want it? Ha, pay for it.
Yeah.
So probably I'm sure you're right from a strictly legal standpoint, but it seems to me that there could be a way from a PR standpoint.
Just a legal. If you got to get them in a legal aspect, I've seen things done where they have to charge a penny for it.
Yeah.
So
or just like the paperwork fee of $5 or something.
Yeah. So.
But
yeah, some of the quotes from the protesters. It's a little heartbreaking. Our children and grandchildren have the right to read these commandments anytime they want. Well, I'd argue that's probably they don't have the right technically, but they can have little handouts. They can carry it with them in their wallets.
I have the right to read Penthouse magazine whenever I want. I just don't expect taxpayers to pay for it.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, so that's the whole...
These kids have, they can read it anytime they want to.
Sure.
But the government just can't get in there and pay for them to read it.
Yeah.
So, I think our rights are being taken away just for the sake of one person who's a small minority of people.
What right? What right is being taken away? Are they claiming that they're not going to be allowed to be Christian anymore?
Yeah.
Are they claiming that they're not going to be allowed to worship anymore?
Their right to put big stone tablets on public lands that espouse their one religious view.
Again, just because the taxpayers aren't footing the bill for whatever it is I like to read, I don't think that means my rights are being taken away.
Yep.
Okay, because I don't think that I have entitlements to whatever I want, and paid for by the public trough.
Yeah.
But they seem to.
They like to stick their nose in everything. So
you're studying law, right?
I'm wanting to go to law school in a year or two. So
well, give us your.
I don't think I'm qualified to do that yet, but.
Well, right. I mean,
we all talk about the cuff anyway. So.
I mean, this is about what it is that can be paid for through government funds versus what can't be, right?
Public funds can't support religion, and that's why they can't just give that monument to a church. They have to find a way to do it in a way. And plus, probably in that situation, since the church was protesting it being removed, they wouldn't want to accept it because they want it in the school.
Exactly. They wanted it where it was.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but the way I look at that is that that kid, the one person, the one minority, has the right to not have to look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If he wants to look at that, he'll go to church.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And the argument that is constantly trotted out, and it is so stupid, it amazes me that people trot it out, but I've even seen it argue, like the newspaper, The Statesman made the same thing. It's like, if it offends you, don't look at it. Well, first off, this isn't a situation about what's offensive. This is a situation about what's permitted constitutionally and what isn't. Secondly, you can use that argument to justify hanging a 50 by 50 foot picture of oral sex in a public place, where people and granny ladies and children are walking by, and tell people, oh, does this offend you? Just don't look at it.
Yeah.
Well, no. There's a question of appropriateness. It's like, I'm not going to try to put a big, pornographic picture in the state rotunda and say, if it offends you, don't look at it. That's not what it's about.
But Christians seem to think, since they have a majority, that gives them the right to run over everybody else.
They want.
In fact, I got a forward in my email this week that said, it said that 86% of Americans believe in God. So what's the problem with having in God we trust on our money, or God in our pledge? So the rest of us should just tell that 14% to sit down and shut up.
Exactly.
No.
And it's, wait a sec, there's a thing called the Constitution.
Yeah.
That gives that 14%, us, the right to not have to sit down and shut up.
Yeah, how dare we state our opinions of stuff?
Yeah. Just like Mando was saying, a long time ago, that the Constitution is what prevents two lions and a sheep deciding what's for lunch. So,
yeah. If democracy,
it's the Constitution that says it's not going to be the sheep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Constitution is the document that says the sheep is not on the menu. So, okay, well, I'm sure this will go on, and
yes, they are going to appeal it.
Yeah,
of course.
But again, this is it's easy but the problem with these kinds of things, and of course, this is again legally is completely proper, but this just gives the fundamentalists fuel to sort of make themselves out to be the victims and the martyrs and the ones who are being picked on by the big evil government. And what's not being done, I don't think, is enough of a dialogue to let people understand, look, separation of church and state exists for a reason. Okay? Yeah. It is to protect, not only is it to protect non-religious people from being annoyed by religious people all the time, okay? But it's to protect, the various religions from each other.
Yeah.
One religion lording it over the others and saying, well, we're in the majority and you're not, so your rights don't count. And we can have all these entitlements just because we're in the majority, and you have to sit down and shut up.
Yeah.
So it's about assuring the rights of all citizens equally. That's what up. What else? What's going on?
Okay.
More. More.
This is in Washington. Religiously orientated groups that provide federal preschool programs could refuse to hire teachers based on their faith. A House panel voted Thursday in approving a scaled-back overhaul of Headstart, which apparently is a big federal program. Now, this is only going to 8 states, not 50, which is what they had originally wanted.
Right.
But overall, the bill aims to expand academic expectation for children, require more teachers to have college education, and improve monitoring to ensure students emerge ready for kindergarten, which is a very noble thing. Yeah. But the bill has an anti-discrimination clause, but it would not apply to groups in hiring people whose religion could affect the organization's work. The idea is backed up by a court ruling and intended to help religious groups or keep religious groups from dropping out of the federal program.
Now, here's what's puzzling to me. Who are they protecting here? Are they saying that if somebody is a fundamentalist Christian and might have these, rather extreme ideas, that they can't not be hired based on that? Or are they saying that if this group is run by fundamentalist Christians, they have the right to not hire anyone who isn't a fundamentalist Christian? You could read this either way. So which is...
It could go either way depending on the group.
Yeah.
Yeah, the group gets to decide based on faith who they're going to hire or not hire.
Because I understand, telling people you can't refuse to hire someone simply because they do have a religion that you don't subscribe to, that's anti-discrimination clause, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But it sounds like what you're reading in the preface there, and maybe I should just shut up and let you go on again. But it sounds like they're trying to take away the anti-discrimination clauses so that if the person doing the hiring is religious, he will have the right to choose not to hire based upon the person who's applying for the job having a different religion than him.
Yeah. Their discrimination
clause, that is a problem.
The discrimination clause that's in place, I'm assuming, based on the article, is that you can't not hire them based on race. Or something like that.
Okay. Or gender.
Or something like that, But the part of the discrimination that's being tossed out is the religious part.
I see.
So that if two people come in and one is a fundamentalist, we are a church, we are hiring, people for our soup kitchen or our preschool thing. We are only going to hire people of our faith.
And see, the problem with that is Head Start's a federally funded program.
Exactly.
If you get federal funds, you can't discriminate.
Yeah, but yes, you can.
But what the whole faith-based initiative has been about is about religious exemptions to the anti-discrimination laws. Exactly. Once again, giving religious organizations entitlements that secular organizations don't have, and saying, okay, you can get away with discriminating, whereas any other group would not be allowed to do that.
You got special rights.
Exactly, it's special rights.
But with the faith-based funding, even there, they were attempting to separate the money, saying that a church can start a soup kitchen with federal money, but it has to be kept separate. You've got to have it on separate books and do all this kind of stuff.
But isn't that already?
And the government can come in and look at it and say, okay, that you're not merging the money, you're not using it for proselytizing, stuff like that. This program is completely different.
Yeah.
The bill's pilot program would allow 8 states to take federal Head Start money and merge it with their own spending to better coordinate preschool services. So they can just throw it all into the same pot and basically proselytize these little kids.
All right. Well, I think I see lawsuits in the wings here.
So yeah, I mean, if there aren't any, there should be.
Well, you see, this is just another case of them picking on those that can't fight for themselves. Headstart is for economically disadvantaged families. Same like faith-based. The people who don't have the resources to fight things like these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's take the poor kids, preach to them all day.
Yeah.
And there you
and
go.
Get paid by the federal government.
And it's very once again it's very handy for them to adopt that sort of victim stance because if you come out in opposition to what they're doing here, then they could say, oh well, you're just beating up on these poor people and not being fair, and you don't care about the poor, blah blah blah, and the same kind of BS. And all that. Okay, we're going to do one more news article, and then we've got callers backed up, so just hang on to the line, and we'll get to you. Never fear.
Yep, this is a short one, by the way.
Okay.
I actually went to school up in Pennsylvania.
You did?
Despite the fact this is in Iowa, but still, same thing. Well, you'll see what I mean.
Captain Non Sequitur on the news today.
But went to Pennsylvania. There were a lot of Amish there. You'd see them, going through the towns on their little horse and buggy and everything like that.
Uh-huh.
And they would have their roadside stands selling their vegetables and their little wares and stuff like that. And apparently now they're selling methamphetamines and hash.
Bumper crop,
This is an Amish man in southern Iowa was facing drug charges on Friday. Marvin Nisley, 28, of rural Wayne County, was arrested last month on charges of trafficking in methamphetamine and possession of marijuana. They said the authorities there were kind of surprised to find the Amish actually asked them to investigate, which is very uncommon. They're a very closed culture. They typically deal with their own problems. But they called him in and said, dude, get some help here.
Well, they probably didn't say quite like that.
But slightly different wording, I'm sure. But yeah, they pulled in the authorities and they arrested this guy for methamphetamines and marijuana. So the new wares of the Amish.
Well, yes. Baskets weren't cutting it. So, well, you have something to put in the basket when you're
exactly. There you go. Something a little more interesting than corn.
Well.
So,
okay, well, thank you, Ashley. All right, well, we'll just throw open the lines to callers. Again, that number 2, ring us up, I think, at 477-2288. And I guess our first caller is going to be Derek. See what he has to say. Hey, you're on the air.
Hi, how are you doing?
We're okay. What's up?
I got a question for the guy on the left. You were talking... Yeah, you there.
Ashley.
You were saying something about the African skulls from like 150,000 years or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you trying to say? Are you saying that we all came from Africa?
The prevailing evidence and theory does say that, yes, there was one species in Africa that essentially is the one that populated the rest of the world in time, obviously.
So we all evolved from Negroes, is what you're saying? Well, would you prefer to say black? I'm sorry.
We all have a common ancestor.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
we didn't come from chimps or anything else. We didn't, nothing that is on Earth today.
Was the common ancestor black or white, though, is what I'm trying to ask you.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the only reason we have different races today, like blacks and whites and Asian and what have you, is just due to genetic drift. I mean, there's nothing really to it other than that. I mean, everybody is the same species. So whether or not the
was the original man white or black is what I'm trying to ask you.
I don't know why that even matters. Yeah. I mean, unless
because I'm curious as to how the genetic drift actually works, I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
Okay. Well, just like with any species, you're going to have some drift that changes things and helps out certain species. Now,
so you're saying that white men are definitely more evolved since it helped them out further.
Well, that's where you're coming from. No. That's where you're coming from. You're a white supremacist. Is that the deal?
Not at all.
Oh, you're not? Well, then why are you even making this point? Why is it even an issue to you whether or not early humans were black?
I'm not making any points. I'm just asking a question.
Why are you asking? But what I'm trying to get to is why are you asking this question? Well, I'm trying to get to why you're asking this question. Why is this an important issue to you?
I'm curious as to how genetic drift makes one species more evolved than another.
Okay, then I would suggest
more evolved is a very weighted statement there, which not necessarily is true.
Sir, you have a shaved head. I'm curious about that.
What are you getting at?
What is your point?
Yeah, what are you getting at?
He brought up the thing about the 150,000-year-old skull from Africa.
Derek, he was reading
a news story.
An article.
Okay, one at a time. Derek, he was reading a news article.
What exactly you're promoting?
He was reading a news article. Okay, yes. This is in the news. If you check the newspapers from last week, you'll see the same article. Yeah. He's reading the news.
It's basically saying that, look, science progresses. We find out new things. You know, the idea. Then
why is Africa in shanties with AIDS?
What?
And America is flourishing.
Derek, you're not making sense now. Let's go back. What? I don't even know what you're getting at. Look, I don't think that it matters whether the out of Africa theory is correct or whether we all came out of Australia or Finland or what have you. It just happens right now.
But if we came from Africa, wouldn't you assume that Africa would be a little more civilized?
I don't think it has anything to do with it.
Nothing to do with it.
Besides, there are a number of reasons why there are certain cultures that are more technologically advanced.
No,
has nothing to do with
We're
that.
talking about biology here.
Yeah, we're talking about biology.
Not sociology, not culture, not anything like that. We're talking biology.
But couldn't biology be better?
No.
Better
for what?
Better for the situation that you're in. As in, people that are living in the extreme north and extreme south are different biologically than the people who are living in the central regions of the earth. Yes, they're better suited to their environments. And just like the people in Africa are better suited to their environments. It is no message that, the white people are better than the black people because we evolved later. That's complete
You just said whites were better than blacks.
It's complete
You idiot. Listen to what he's saying. Listen to what he's saying. He's trying to give you examples of why these arguments are completely stupid.
You're taking
not even listening.
Completely out of context.
You said that blacks are better equipped for their environment.
Yes, and exactly. They're better equipped for their environment.
You're saying a black man is different from you.
Derek, boy, and they're talking about clueless.
Why are you not adapted well for your environment if you were living in Africa, man with bald head?
Because white skin, typically, it would absorb too much sunlight. I'd have, vitamin D problems.
Although if you live there for long enough, your skin would darken.
Exactly. Get a tan.
And, but again, the whole thing about different races doesn't really have anything to do with whether or not one's, a certain group of
the common ancestor would have had to have either been white or black.
Okay.
Or maybe Asian, I guess.
And
so which one was it?
Does it matter?
Yes, because one evolved out of the other, obviously.
And?
It changed because its situation was different.
One at a time. Why is this significant? I mean, why is that particularly significant?
Why isn't it? I'm not asking why it's significant. One is obviously evolved from the other one.
Okay.
So that's what I'm asking you. Are you saying that white people evolved out of black people?
It's possible.
That does not make them
better or worse
in any way.
Doesn't mean one group of people is better or worse than another group of people.
It just means that a certain group of these people traveled up north.
You say that you prescribe to scientific theory. The United States of America is over 75% white men.
That is completely wrong.
Yeah, you are a white supremacist. That's what you're coming from. All right, that's enough of that. Okay. Yeah.
75% male.
Yeah, it's 75% white male. I don't think so. What about the women?
His position doesn't need the dignity of any further. Okay, he was trying to make a white supremacist argument, even though he wasn't. He was pretending he wasn't. So again, it's just the atheist experience. John is on line 3. How you doing? You're on the air.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I was calling basically to ask the question that what would constitute. I mean, from what I understand about atheists is the reason that you don't that you are atheist is basically that you don't believe in God, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, and I guess the question is, what would constitute a belief in God, in your opinion?
A belief in God? Well,
yeah. What would lead you to believe in God? I mean, what kind of test would lead you to believe in God?
Well, I mean, I don't really know. First off, I would have to have an operational definition of what a God even is. Okay, I would have to have some understanding of what
you must have at least that operational definition, right?
Well, for example, I know what the Christians say their God is. I mean, I know what the Christians say their God is.
Okay,
Some Christians, I know different Christians say will define their God in a slightly different way. But again, for me to even entertain the concept of God, I'd have to have some reason to think, first off, it was necessary. And then secondly, I'd have to have some sort of, some kind of definition. That's
we just start off by saying that you don't believe in God, and you agreed with that. So if you don't have an operational definition of what it is you don't believe in, it seems like you've got a problem.
Okay, we don't agree with what 90% of people out there call God.
Okay, so let's just start with that definition there.
Well,
okay, this is commonly accepted that there's a big invisible man in the sky who created the universe.
Okay, so what test could you design that would prove it to you that such a entity would exist?
Make me omniscient.
Huh?
Make me omniscient. If God is omnipotent and omniscient, He can make me omniscient so that I know everything.
How would you measure your omniscience?
Well, if I knew everything beyond the shadow of a doubt, then I would be omniscient, I suppose.
I mean, how would you know that you actually know everything?
Good point. You see, it's one of those where it's very hard to pin down. How would you?
Yeah, and I think the point I was just talking about. There is no test. Isn't that true? I mean, there can be no test. I
think that there are various things that could probably happen that would appear to me to be what you might call miracles, say violations of natural law. That if they could not be explained through natural means, I would be willing to entertain the notion then of the existence of the supernatural. So that would be step one. Well, that would be step one.
It could just be an illusion.
Well, what if you were able to discount that? Let's just, again, for the benefit of the doubt, let's say you experienced something really bizarre.
No, scientifically.
Well, let's just say you were able to discount that.
I can't. You have to give me an objective measure that says, this it's absolutely true. This is God. This is not God. And I'm cutting to the chase right now. I don't believe that such a test could exist.
I would generally tend to agree with that because the only way I could prove it to me is God's come down somehow put the thought in my head that look, I exist, you moron.
Mm-hmm. But how would you know?
How would I prove that I'm not hallucinating?
Exactly.
Or just a moron at the time?
Yeah.
So yeah, there is no way to prove. But we're talking about an almighty God. He can think of something pretty good to convince a lot of people that he actually exists.
Or if he's all-powerful, he could just make you believe without
actually doing anything.
Yeah,
but then that would go against free will.
I just think that
you're right. I think, as John, you make a good point, which is that theists face a pretty insurmountable obstacle when they are trying to come up with reasoned explanations or definitions or ways in which supernatural claims can be made testable through more or less empirical means. It's very, very difficult because there is always a way that you could say, but how do you know you're really experiencing that? That could just be you hallucinating. That could be you having some sort of, vision. So yeah, I mean, it's for me, first off, I think it would be a multi-step process. And the first step would be my coming to some sort of agreement with the notion that yes, there is such a thing as like magic, like the supernatural.
Well, something beyond our capabilities today.
Or say ways in which natural law could be violated at will. Okay.
Yeah, but of course, I mean, even Einstein's theories could have been, believed as being, outside the natural law. If the current level of understanding was Galilean. Theories.
Sure, yeah. What's the sort of Arthur C. Clarke? He says,
any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
That's right. So, yeah.
Good point.
So you're right. It's very, very difficult, and you often find that when we debate Christians and theists on the program, we are often in a situation of arguing at cross purposes.
Right.
Because they are having difficulty understanding why it is that we just are resistant to believing these claims that sound perfectly good to them. And then we're insisting upon standards of evidence that are not standards of evidence they require, nor do they see any reason to require those standards.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult quite often when you're in those debates to sort of, it's often a never the twain will meet situation.
Right.
And so, yeah, but I agree with you. The theists face a very serious obstacle, and quite often in those arguments, they usually end up with the theist finally throwing up his hands and saying, well, it all comes down to faith for me.
Yeah, but I think but they're absolutely right because I at least at this point, to my level of understanding, I cannot devise, I can't even begin to think. In fact, I actually think that there is no objective test for the existence of God. And actually, I don't know if it's a problem for atheists or if it's a problem for theists, that fact.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it would be a problem for atheists because, again, I mean, an atheist is simply a person saying, I don't believe this.
Yeah, but if there's no way to believe it.
Well, there would be a way to believe it, and that would be through the process that they call faith, which is just, I don't require evidence.
No.
I have some sort of revealed understanding of it that appeals to me, and so through faith I believe. That's what you hear a lot of Christians say.
No. I mean, I agree with their position, and in fact, they're being honest in the sense of saying that they're making the leap between their level of understanding to the unknowability, whatever, and they call that faith. But I mean, I'm thinking that if there's no objective test, and I can't think of one because I would always be left with some level of doubt whether or not that actually is, quote unquote, the God. It could be our creator. I mean, we could have been created by aliens, but that wouldn't be sufficient, description of God.
Yeah. And well, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. But then again, there you go. We don't know whether it is the absolute God or is it just somebody who's a whole lot better than we are, and I'm just wondering whether the problem is with, if it's a problem for atheists or if it's a problem with theists, this fact.
Well, in dealing with something like this, yes, I can't, think of any test where you can, mix something in a chemical jar and say, ooh, it turned purple, therefore there's a God.
Well, let's call it what it is. It's a scientific test. That's
exactly.
what you guys use a lot.
But however, there are a lot of claims against, let's say, again, the Christian Bible that says, God is true. Well, there are a lot of, logical and moral arguments against that. The problem of evil, for instance. Mm-hmm. If all these different arguments that we already have against, the idea of God can be refuted, and they say that, look, there is no moral problem with the problem of evil because blah, blah, blah. Well then, okay, once all of those are broken down, then you could start introducing actual evidence that maybe God does exist. Right now, we have no physical evidence that he exists, and we have also a lot of moral and logical problems that imply that he cannot exist.
But now you're talking about the Christian God, right?
Exactly, okay. Exactly.
So now, if you want to talk about any of the other 14,000 Hindu gods,
then you have to go through those.
Or something like that. But yeah, see, that's why I would suggest, in answer to your question, it is much more of a problem for theists. Because, again, as atheists, we're people sitting back here just saying, show us the evidence. Mm-hmm. I'm perfectly willing to be persuaded of any point of view, provided it's backed up by solid evidence.
Yeah, but I just don't believe that even if you did, if I gave you a mountain of evidence, I don't think that
well, it would depend on it would depend on the quality of the evidence. I mean, if the evidence were able to, if I looked at the evidence and was able to come up with no other conclusion to explain that mountain of evidence other than there had to be some sort of supernatural source that I can't, that's, it's metaphysical in nature and it's not material in nature, then there you go. But you're right. Then now you get into the whole sticky problem of, well, what would be the nature of that kind of evidence? So, yeah, I think that it's a big problem. I think it's a problem for theists, being that they are the ones anyone who's making the claim of the existence of a thing, mm-hmm. if you're claiming that aliens exist, or the Loch Ness Monster, or gods, or Bigfoot, or what have you, the burden of proof for that claim rests upon the person claiming the existence of the thing in question.
Well, maybe so, but I have a doubt.
Well, it does. I mean,
I can't come up with an objective test. I don't know. It just
have you read
problem I have with.
Have you read Carl Sagan's The Whole Dragon in the Garage?
No.
Thing? Okay, it's like your neighbor comes to you and he says, "John, I have a dragon in my garage." So you're like, "Cool." So you go over to his house, and you look in his garage and you don't see anything. Mm-hmm. And you're like, "Okay, well I don't see your dragon." And your neighbor says, "Oh, well that's because he's invisible." And you're like, oh, okay, well, why don't I throw my glass of water out and it will splash against the dragon and I'll be able to see that he's there. And then your friend says, well, no, my dragon he's impervious to water. Mm-hmm. And then you say, okay, well, I'll sprinkle sawdust on the floor of your garage and then I will see his footprints in the sawdust. Like, no, my dragon hovers above the ground. You see, so what you always get, and any time that you do try to formulate a test, right. Okay, some believer comes to you with a claim, and then you say, okay, here's a way we can test the claim. Then they just come up with excuse after excuse after excuse as to why the particular test won't be valid. For example, you'll see psychics do this kind of thing all the time. People who can claim to read your mind, talk to your loved ones. If you're the least bit skeptical of what they have to say, and you're like, okay, test me. Here, read my mind. Tell me what my dead mother is saying to me, or what have you. They're like, oh no, you're giving me too much negative energy with all your skepticism, and my powers aren't working right now. See, there's always some way, there's always some out that they can concoct, so that they don't really have to prove to you, the hard-bitten skeptic who, pain in the ass who wants all this hard evidence, and that way they are able to protect their belief from serious hard skepticism and just go on with it. So you're right. In that regard, you're dead right, John. It's very, very difficult to come up with a test that the theist will accept as a valid, or the believer, or the person promoting whatever paranormal idea will accept as a valid test. Well, again, I would accept the whole idea of, if you say you have an invisible dragon in your garage, I think sprinkling sawdust on the ground is a perfectly good way to test that. I'll accept that as a test.
Yeah, but going from there to being God is a whole other matter.
Well, no, it's not really. I mean, what's the big difference? What's the difference between an invisible dragon in your garage and an invisible man who made the universe and watches over you? What's the difference? I mean, fundamentally.
Because one person one thing is just a dragon, the other thing is a creator of us, and we'd never know. We couldn't know.
Yeah. Well, but then, of course, at that point, that would refute all religions, right? Because then, religions have their holy books. Christianity has its Bible. Islam has its Quran, in which, God is constantly interacting with his loyal, loving subjects, and he is having a direct interaction and influence upon their lives. So then to say, well, you can never know about God, that poses a problem for religion, because religion is out there claiming that there are all these ways to know God. So, you're right. Anyway, very interesting talk, but we got other guys lined up.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, why don't you call us back any old time, okay?
Sure, bye.
Thanks. All right. Andy, you were like nodding and...
I was just agreeing with everything you're saying.
That's what we like having you on the show, Andy. Okay, who's next? I'm confused. I saw an arrow drawn to Alonso on 1. Is that correct? We'll see what he has to say. Hey, how you doing?
Fine. I do get what you're saying, and I do understand about, the questions asking and always an excuse. But anyway, so I guess, the signs of the Bible at the end of days, he don't think that it's happening now. He doesn't, you know what I mean? Wars, diseases, hurricanes, floods, the mark of the beast, the chips in people's bodies, all that.
They've been going on for the last 2,000 years since it was written. We know a little bit more about it today just because we have better media.
Right.
We have CNN to tell us about what's going on in India.
Andy?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Just we know more about it, but all that has been going on.
Yeah,
when the Black Plague hit Europe in the 1300s, that was pretty much that's the end. It's the apocalypse.
Right.
It's all happening now. And the point Ashley made. We even as recently as 100 years ago.
Yeah.
The world was people lived in their little isolated pockets, and unless you were a traveler, you didn't really, you could
or
get...
it was some kind of huge news.
Yeah, you could get, somebody living on his ranch in Bastrop could never travel more than 20 miles from his home in his whole lifetime.
Yeah.
But nowadays, with the internet, even for the last 100 years, but especially now, something happens in Finland, okay, and 3 minutes later, we all know about it because it's on the CNN.com, so there's, we do have, if it seems like there's more stuff happening in the world, that's just because we have better communication.
Well, if you don't believe in God, I guess I can say is you better be right?
Well, that's Pascal's wager. Yeah, that's a logical fallacy.
Yeah.
Okay? If for example, if you don't believe in Zeus, you better be right. How do you know that maybe the ancient Greeks were right, and when we die, we go to their underworld, and we get judged by their gods. So
according to the Egyptians, your heart is going to be weighed against a feather, and if it's heavier than the feather of truth,
so
you're gonna burn in hell.
So if you don't worship Amun, you better be right.
Yeah, I know. You better watch it.
See, so.
Well, it's nice talking to you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for calling. Call us back any old time. All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Howard is on 2. Hey, you're on the air.
Yes, I saw an interesting documentary on television. It was a Baptist church in Georgia, and I saw it while I was living on the West Coast. And what they did was they believed in, there's a scripture in the Bible about how men can dance with snakes, and the ones that are saved can survive snake bites. And so what they did was, in this Georgia Baptist church, was they brought out these very poisonous snakes.
Copperheads.
Yeah, and rattlesnakes and things like that, and they bit people, and they even drank their poison, and they didn't die.
Yeah. Well, one guy did at one of these churches. Are these the Shakers? Is that the name of the?
That's another word for them. Yeah. I've heard it's Pentecostal also. Maybe a branch of them or something.
It was very, very weird and strange and everything, and like they challenged any non-believer or atheist to come there and dance with their snakes and get bit and see if he could survive. Yeah. Would you be willing to take that challenge?
Well, I'll tell you what, no, I wouldn't, because these guys, the guys who are getting bitten and not getting sick and dying, have developed a resistance to the venom over years and years of doing this. You can do that. I mean, actually,
technically, they don't get bitten.
Yeah, well, snake charmers in India have done the same thing.
Yeah. Very rarely do they ever get bitten. Yeah. The verses, we got a note, actually, it's the last 20 verses of Mark. Typically, they say that you will be able to handle snakes and not get bitten, and that's what they do. They handle these snakes, which have been around people for their entire lives, and they don't get bitten. And also, snakes can do what's called dry bites, which means that they bite in defense and stuff like that, but they don't actually, put out venom.
But the fact is, though, that you can, and people who handle snakes, get resistance. Herpetologists, you can build up a resistance to the venom over a period of time.
Technically, that can be incorrect. Sometimes you can get.
Well, it depends on your
allergic reactions.
On your constitution.
If you've had enough of them, it actually becomes worse to where the first couple bites, not a big deal. Yeah. You finally get bitten for the 5th time and you die.
Well,
same with poison ivy.
It's not a guaranteed thing, right? Yeah. But depending on your health and your sturdiness.
Yeah, depending on your system.
and your genetic predispositions to that.
Yeah. I mean, Crocodile Hunter is probably better off. If he got bit by a scorpion, he'd probably be a little better off than I would. I mean, I might not die. I might get much sicker than he would get. Yeah. Because he's probably been bitten 100 times and he's had the antidote and back and forth and had the anti-venom. So he's got all of this. I mean, goodness knows what's swimming around in his system. But there was one of these guys, one of these snake handlers who was killed.
Okay.
By one of his snakes.
Don't remember that.
Don't remember his name, but
But I have seen things in this. They handle copperheads and rattlesnakes, and they drink arsenic. Stuff like that, or supposedly they do. Mm-hmm. The actual truth behind it, I don't know.
I don't want to try it and make sure it's.
I know. I'm not going to test it.
Not my idea of a good time. Handling poisonous creepy crawlies. But again, the arsenic in tiny doses.
Yeah, you can.
Won't kill you.
Yeah.
And you can, and that's another thing. You can build up sort of
resistance.
Again, not a full immunity. It's not like to where you can ever just guzzle it by the gallon and go, ha, look at me, drink a poison. But, so.
Well, why do they do that? I don't understand why a religion would emphasize dancing with snakes. I don't get it.
Well, neither do we. I think that it's just another one of these crazy things that religious people do when they get into it. Maybe they take these last 20 verses of Mark. Yeah. They've decided to interpret those as being, this will identify our sect. This will give us our identity, and this is our way of. It's just the way they choose to worship. I mean, that's why you have different sects.
Test of faith.
Yeah.
Also, I've heard that maybe the music they had music going. I'm not sure on that, but I heard in India that when they play those flutes, it hypnotizes the snakes. That maybe the music also could hypnotize the snakes and stuff. Yeah. But I tell you, if I'm ever in a church and they start breaking out the snakes, I'm heading for the door. You can bet on that.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you. No, I wouldn't blame you there.
Actually, I've heard a lot of those churches that do stuff like that don't have back doors, so that people can't.
They bolt the door. Now bring out the snake.
Diving through the stained glass window at that point. Well, I've heard about the guys in India, the snake charmers in India. It's not the music that hypnotizes the snake. What it is, it's that back and forth motion.
Exactly. We hear the music. Snakes are deaf.
And what the snake is doing is he is like, okay, there's a thing moving, and so he's trying to poise to strike. Yeah. And a good snake charmer, like the kind of guys who don't die in the first few months of doing it, know how to keep the movement going to where the snake is always sort of on his guard, but not.
Yeah.
Doesn't
because
really
they are typically very still. When they're sitting there, they're not moving. It's the end of this, flute or whatever it is that's moving around. The snakes are attracted by the movement of that. Yeah. And also a lot of times what they actually do whenever they're in crowded places is they actually wire the mouths of the snake shut. It's really it's really cruel. It's really cruel. And they actually, pierce it and, sew their mouths shut so that they can't bite.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of a safe.
There's another possibility too, which is that some of the snakes in like the shaker, if that's the name of them, in some of these religious ceremonies, and with some of the snake charmers, a lot of times they're milked. Right,
that's true.
You know, they de-venomize them before doing their routine. You know, because otherwise you would have a lot. Yeah, you would have a lot more. You know, dead guys probably doing this, especially with cobras. Good grief! You don't talk about dangerous snake. I'm told now that shakers no longer exist. So were those the snake handling people? Or no, we're wrong. Snake handlers were.
Shakers were like a Pentecostal system.
Okay, shakers were someone else entirely, we're being told. They were not the snake-handling Pentecostals.
Okay.
So that's fine. You know, that's, whatever the case, I want to be far, far away from religious zanies holding up poisonous critters.
Bringing up poisonous snakes and saying, here, drink this arsenic.
Yeah. Rightiola. All right. Well, we'll get some more names on the whiteboard here, I'm sure, in a minute. But, Andy, what else? Enlighten us with stuff.
With what?
I don't know. Again, we're still waiting. I got guys on hold here, and I'm not getting names. What's up? So
I don't know. Very interesting though. But going back actually to what was said, talking about herpetology, I'm a fan. Going back to the book that was here earlier, saying the first chapter was nothing but anecdotal evidence about the talk of dragons.
Oh, that. Yeah.
Well, part of the problem with that could be, I mean, I've heard of this a lot in, even in the States. People call up the animal control and say there's a 20-foot, python in my backyard. Well, there's actually a 3-foot corn snake. When people see something that they don't know of and they're scared of, that thing grows in size really, really quickly. And when people report something like that, well, it's gonna sound bad.
Well, that even happens with humans. If you look at studies, eyewitness reports are horribly inaccurate.
Yeah.
There are teachers, that have they've been studying this in class, so their students should know better. And then they have someone run in the middle of class and grab a purse or something, and then when they ask the people to give a description, they're like a foot taller than they actually are, and 10 pounds, 20 pounds heavier, and
blue shirt versus red shirt versus yellow shirt versus no shirt.
Yeah.
So eyewitness accounts are notoriously unreliable.
Yeah.
Things.
Yeah.
Well, and you see this. A perfect example would be the whole UFO culture that has, any sort of shape in the sky now. It could be some spacecraft from some alien world, and accounts of Bigfoot, accounts of Loch Ness Monster, just people just witnessing things and they're not quite sure they understand what it is, and then you couple that with this already profound cultural influence.
Oh, yeah.
And that is predisposing them to interpret the thing a certain way, and voila, you get what you get.
So. Loch Ness Monster, my mom grew up in Attica, New York, and they had their own Loch Ness Monsters in the creek nearby. And when some guy died, they found an inflatable thing in his basement. But everybody swore that there was this little monster in the creek, so...
Yeah.
Most guys, most people I know who have inflatable things in their basement don't take them to the creek. So that either a real joker or a real kinky guy or what have you. Okay, James is on line 2. So let's see. Hey, you're on the air. What's up?
Hi. I talked to the guy who answered the phones, and he answered my first question, which was about Martin Luther and the Reformation.
Okay.
Yes.
Second question, I guess, was I asked him was about the Pilgrims. What is y'all's stance on Pilgrims and Mayflower, the early Americans?
Well, as with anything, there are good and bad points. Good point, they got away, or they tried to get away from an oppressive religion in England. Bad point, they just brought it over here and killed out everybody else who didn't agree with them.
I am not
kind of simplified there, but
I'm not that well versed in that particular aspect. I mean, that particular subject of American history. I know that on our fact page there is something to the effect. There's a question about the supposed Christian heritage of America.
Yeah.
Where the former member of our group who wrote this long article about exactly what it was that many of the earliest settlers, the Puritans, I don't know about the Pilgrim, the Puritan sect specifically, which I think who you were talking about, did set up what was a very oppressive sort of religious oligarchy. Okay, which was not really any friendlier to dissenters than what they were trying to flee from, in the old world.
Yeah.
But what they did was they crossed the Atlantic and, they did something admirable. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I guess they got the ball rolling over here, but time
depends on your definition of admirable. I mean,
well, a timely basis, because my point is sort of like it's based on what year you live. So if you're in the Reformation, Martin Luther looks pretty good, but apparently he was an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the early Christians had to deal with the Romans, which they had their ideology as well.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I was thinking about, is that it depends on kind of what the times you live in, what you can go with. And so far as the atheist, I would say you probably, offer a solution to kind of free up people's minds,
there was a period of history. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
There's just the period. There's the period of history, I guess, which is called what they call the Age of Reason or the Enlightenment, which is when the power of the Vatican, particularly, the Church, over all aspects of human culture, began to sort of wane, and you did have more secular philosophers, or not necessarily atheists, but people who were looking away from the Church for various, ideas about the life and how we live it, and from that you began to get. Skepticism became more acceptable, and you started seeing more secular philosophies and attitudes come to light, and kind of pushing the Church into the back burner, as it were. But as I understand it, there's been disbelief and skepticism all through the ages. It's just people were more reluctant to talk about it back then,
or worded in different ways. Like Thomas Jefferson and a couple of our founding fathers were deist and not atheist because that was more acceptable. So they'd say they believed in a God, but he created us and then went away.
Mm-hmm.
So
because you would face, I think, even back then in those times, blasphemy laws and actual real legal repercussions if you just came right out and said there's no God. And, we're all in it, together, and so we've really got there's no divine. So there were serious, I think, ramifications also. It's only, I think, been within the last 100, 150 years or so that somebody could come out and proclaim himself to be an unbeliever. And even not that long, what is it, Robert Ingersoll was writing something about 100 years ago, around then, and had some serious backlash, to his...
what about the monkey trial and where is it?
Scopes.
The Scopes trial, which again was a scientific issue that became a religious issue.
Yeah.
When creationists, as they still to today, were claiming that here's science is now threatening the belief system.
So we're going to take you to court. For
Yeah.
trying to teach our children science.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think disbelief has always been with us. It's only been very, very recently that people have been able to come out and express it and say that there's another way of looking at the world. That there's a way that does not rely upon supernatural influence. Or the influence of churches or religions.
Yeah, well, thanks for having the show.
Well, thank you very much, and call us back anytime, okay? Okay. I think Shelley's next, am I right? On line 3? Yeah, line 3. Hey, you're on the air?
Hi.
Hi.
I have, kind of a general observation, and maybe I need just a comment on it.
Okay.
Originally, I saw these bumper stickers that said, God bless America. Well, after 9/11, I started seeing these bumper stickers that says, America bless God. Mm-hmm. And my question is, if God is all-power and omnipotent, why does an insignificant bunch of capitalist pigs need to start blessing God?
Don't hold anything back there, Shellie.
Capitalist big dogs.
Well, the funny thing, right? I mean, ask a Christian if he thinks God is perfect, and he'll say yes, of course, right? Mm-hmm. Now, but the definition, it seems to me, of a perfect being, the definition of perfection itself, right, is that you lack for nothing, right? I mean, if you're perfect, there's nothing else that can be added to you to make you better. Mm-hmm. Okay, so why would a perfect being need to be worshipped? Why would a perfect being need to be glorified, need to have this affirmation every week of millions of people bowing down in churches and praying and singing hosannas and hymns and kowtowing and banging their head against the floor or handling poisonous snakes or doing whatever it is they do to glorify this being? Why would God need to be worshipped if he is indeed perfect? So I think that it's just, as we've done all throughout history, people sort of make gods in their image. Mm-hmm. And I think what is really, and this is just me giving my opinion, and you two may have your own, but I think that there is something in it for the believer in terms of a wonderful sense of ego gratification to know that your best friend, okay, is the creator of the universe. And that's a good best friend. I mean, most people can only say that their best friend is Mick Jagger. You know, some people can only say that their best friend is Bill Clinton or George W. Bush, but my best friend created the whole universe, and he's deeply interested in my life.
Okay, what's weird about that is if God is supposed to be my best friend, and I believe you said several episodes ago or shows ago that God is a bully. Why would I need a best friend to be such a horrible bully?
Like, he'll beat up on the people you don't like.
Yeah, why would someone...
So that he'll stay your friend. I mean, if you're not nice to him, he's going to bully you until you're nice to him again.
That's how it worked in elementary school, right? Yeah. You keep giving the bully your lunch money, and he stays your friend, and that's what you want. Yeah, again, another thing that just makes no sense. If God has this wonderful love for you, he would not threaten you by saying, and you have to love me back, otherwise you'll be tortured in eternity forever. There's just so much about the way, now, and again, we're talking specifically about the Christian belief system, but there's just so much about that does not make sense.
Oh, I know.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So we agree.
Don't ask us. Ask us.
Maybe you talk to a Christian this week and tell us what they say.
I talk to my boyfriend all the time, and all he can do is disagree.
Well,
but I must say, I haven't heard of any of those signs like you say. I've seen the God Bless America all the time.
I've seen them.
The Bless...
I've seen the ones that say, God bless America, now America bless God. I've seen that.
That's new. I haven't actually seen that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It's you don't see them everywhere, but
of course, obviously.
They tend to be on the kind of cards where they have like 5 other Christian bumper stickers on them at once too. So. Yeah. So okay, Shellie, anything else?
No, I know.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you watching and calling up. Okay.
Okay.
Take care. And we're waiting for Rose now, right? That's right. I'm just getting everything in order. Hi, you're on the air.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
Fine, and you?
We are well.
Good. I have a question for the gentleman who quoted about the snakes or the shakers, or he quoted scripture. My question is, have you studied this, or were you taught this when you were young?
Okay, the caller claimed that that there's a sect, and I've seen them on television before. Yeah. There's a sect of believers who would handle poisonous snakes as part of their practice, and then we were told in the control room told us that this refers to the last 20 verses of Mark. Yeah. So again, we don't.
We haven't studied that part specifically. From what I understand, it's along the lines of, ye of faith will be able to handle snakes and not be, handle poisonous creatures and not be poisoned.
If your faith is
something along those lines.
Yeah, something along those lines, that if your faith is strong enough and what have you, then you can do most anything. You can even handle these poisonous, venomous serpents, and they'll bite you, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I understand all that. But my question was mainly to the gentleman who stated whatever was brought from the control room. Are there Christians on your station, or just people using the Bible as a research book, or is this something that some of you have been taught when you were younger?
Well, again, with our show, this is the Atheist show, so we're giving the other point of view. The guy who called earlier, I don't know exactly what he sounded like. He might be an unbeliever, but he had he was just telling us about this particular sect of Christians. So that's kind of where that came from. The station you're watching isn't just our station. We do this show every week. It's 90 minutes in Sunday afternoons, and then there are other programs on about other stuff all day long. So in that regard, we were just responding to that caller, and then we were and giving our opinion of why we thought some people might engage in that kind of crazy practice in the first place. Mm-hmm. Someone in our control room told us that it was the last 20 verses in Mark where you will find apparently what we seem to think that sect of snake handlers uses as what they would consider to be
their reasoning.
That would be what they consider to be the scriptural basis of what they do. We're not saying we advocate it or think that they're right. Of course, we don't think they're right.
Yeah,
we think
it's obvious that you don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, we think it's nuts to go around grabbing poisonous snakes and saying, "Ha-ha, look at me." I mean, that's just we think that's just plain irresponsible. So, so that would be that's kind of that's how that conversation got going.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
I am a believer, and I do believe, as a Christian, believe. But in one of the statements that were made, I don't know if it was another person who stated, speaking about the proof of God, trying to prove who God is. Mm-hmm. If God is God, I don't believe God has to prove that He's God. And if we are looking for proof, I believe if you truly are earnestly looking for it, He'll show you that.
Well, again, I mean, in what way would, I would be perfectly willing, right, to look at any piece of evidence that was presented to me that was compelling evidence, and if it really was compelling, I mean, if there were no other way that I could explain the evidence that I was seeing other than to say there must be some sort of supernatural divine source for this, I'm perfectly happy to accept any kind of proof along those lines.
I believe that the proof will happen for you in your experience, your daily experience. You will one day have an experience that you will know that you know that you know that God is God.
Well,
but that's not any kind of factual proof. That's just.
But see, you don't have to. God doesn't exist on just facts. I mean, man's mentality is for facts. Man wants to logically establish things as a fact-finding basis. Mm-hmm. God is. Period.
Well, how can you, I guess, prove to us in a sense that the experience?
That's not for me to prove to you.
The experience
God has to prove Himself to you. I can't prove to you God.
Okay, now wait a second.
But the point is that you had some experience, we'll say 10 years ago, that showed you that God is real in your life. Now, there are a couple different things that could have happened that day 10 years ago. One, actually, God did come down and touch your heart and, show you that He's real. Or you just had an emotional, reaction, experience that day that you interpreted as God.
I prayed a prayer.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
that's an emotional.
We don't want to.
You did.
Yeah, we don't want to second guess what happened in Rose's life, right? I mean,
Very good. I see integrity in you.
That's not the point. The purpose is Rose, and I don't think Ashley is showing any lack of integrity. He's just saying that people have experiences sometimes that they interpret in certain ways, but my point is. It puzzles me why God would set things up the way you say He set things up. I mean,
I never said He set things up.
Well, if He didn't, then some other source did. Is that what you're implying?
I am saying He allowed things to happen the way they are.
Okay.
You're saying that God set things up. I never said that.
I'm trying to get to the bottom of what you're saying. I'm trying to understand the claims that you're making specifically about your God.
The only thing I'm saying is God is.
Okay, well, that's not a statement that really has any content. Do you understand? I mean,
logically, you're not taking that statement as a statement of content.
Well, if I were to say Winnie the Pooh is, what have I just said?
Winnie the Pooh is.
And what meaning and what application does that have to any sort of real life experience that I would consider meaningful?
To however you've applicated Winnie the Pooh. I mean, you can apply Winnie the Pooh as a bedtime bear, or you can apply Winnie the Pooh as a friend. And why would I need to do that? Someone imaginary.
Okay. Well, why? And why? Okay. So
because it's it's in your mind. It's the mind thought.
So then, without any substance to the claim beyond Winnie the Pooh is, why would I consider it anything other than, well, Winnie the Pooh is imaginary? What reason would I have to consider it more than that?
You would have a reason because you make the choice to have a reason. In any way, no one can make you believe, and no one can make you not believe that Winnie the Pooh is. That's all the statement I'm making.
Okay. Okay, I understand that. And this is when I was talking to the caller earlier about sometimes we talk at cross purposes to believers. What I think that's what is different, about our point of view is that we don't see any reason why concepts like God should have any different sort of a standard of evidence than anything else. I mean, what is so special about believing your God that it gets to be exempt from any sort of other evidentiary standards that I would apply to anything in my life. Like, should I drive today in a rainstorm? Should I vote for this particular politician? Should I trust the weather report? I mean, why would my choice to believe in a God have any less of a good, strict evidentiary standard than those?
All I'm saying is you're making a life choice in whatever you believe in. Everything you believe in,
that's true.
You are making a life choice.
That's true.
And you make the life choice to explain what you're experiencing or what you believe in. And
so you're saying that I could either choose to believe things, if I wanted to, I could choose to believe things without evidence. I could consider evidence irrelevant and believe what I wanted.
That's true.
Well, but I choose not to do that. I consider that irrational.
That's the logical deductional reasoning.
All right, thank you. Okay.
So you're saying it's irrational to believe in God, then?
What I'm saying is you make a choice.
Well, I could
make a choice or irrational. You're making a choice to believe.
I could make the choice to believe in pink unicorns.
And that's your choice.
It's a bad choice, wouldn't you say?
No, I'm not going to say it's a bad or a good choice because I've never seen a pink unicorn.
Well, if you've never seen a pink unicorn, what would that imply to you? That maybe they do or maybe they don't exist?
What that implies is someone has a thought of something that they believe is or is not.
Right. Okay, well, here, the crux of the matter for us, Rose, is that we tend to think that it matters for a claim to be true. Okay?
And that's a logical thought.
Yeah, and we don't think that it's just people. I don't think that it is a good idea for people just going around saying, I'll choose to believe whatever I want. Because if the belief can't be backed up and it's irrational, there can be very real, in many cases, harmful results. Or the simple act of fostering self-deception, I think, isn't good for people.
Didn't you choose to not believe? You made a choice.
Based upon what I consider to be a stupefying lack of compelling evidence.
Yeah, well, according to you, you made a choice.
Right. But Rose, you're not hearing me. I made the choice based upon what I consider to be a lack of compelling evidence supporting the notion that there's any sort of deity. Show me that evidence and I'll be happy to look at it. But this whole idea of everyone can just choose.
I would pray that you experience that evidence, that you would personally experience it and not be shown it, because to be shown that is not showing faith.
There you go. So in the end, it all comes down to faith, does it not?
That is the only way to believe anything. Did you have faith that you'd sit down in that chair and it would hold you?
No, I didn't.
You didn't have any thought process. You just sat in it?
No, I had thought processes. What I didn't have was faith. Okay,
so with your thought process, was there any foundational, did you not do a deductional, logical reasoning that if I sit my body in a chair, that chair would hold me?
Yeah, that's called doing science. Okay, I have experience of sitting down in chairs before.
That's still logical, deductive reasoning.
That's right.
That's still man's
and that is not how apparently you're saying we should arrive at an understanding of believing in God.
No, you're going to arrive in the understanding of believing in God from experiencing Him.
Rose, hold on. Okay, I have experience through 37 years of life of sitting in chairs and having them support me. Mm-hmm. I don't have similar physical, empirical experiences of deities. As soon as I do, then call us back and I'll tell you all about it, okay?
No, I think you'll be calling me.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll take that challenge, all right?
Good.
Thanks, Rose. Bye-bye. Again, cross purposes, just not getting the whole evidence. Evidence matters, and
and some choices, I mean, she was saying it was a choice that you have to just believe in God. And to a certain extent, I mean, yeah, I could convince myself of anything if I really wanted to for some reason.
I don't know you could. Well, think about it.
It would be tough, but
it'd be tough.
Kind of beside the point. You can have, there are some choices that you can make to believe innocuous things. Mm-hmm. I believe that there are aliens on another planet. Big whoop. It doesn't affect how I do business, how I handle friends, anything in my life. No big deal. But if I believe that those aliens are coming down and, attacking people, well, then I'm going to make changes in my life to make sure that doesn't happen. Or it does happen, depending on what I think about it.
So this gets to the meme affecting behavior.
Exactly.
Like we were talking about last week.
Exactly. I mean, if you have this wacky belief that changes your behavior, you better be sure that it's based on real things versus just some kind of brain fart.
Yeah. And again, this Rose's call, again, it ties into the call we had earlier on. Like, what would be a test that would be acceptable for a God, right? Or for any sort of divine supernatural being that you could repeat it, you could get repeatable results that were reliable, and what have you. And I don't know that there is one, because again, as Rose was doing, you can always make excuse after excuse after excuse, backing you up, saying, oh, well, it all just ultimately comes down to faith. That's the only way you can come to a knowledge of anything. Well, and that doesn't apply to sitting in chairs. I sit in the chair, it stands up. There's no faith needed. So.
Yeah. I was going to say, that can go back to the snake thing, too. That was a test of faith, a test of, it all goes into the mean. Mm-hmm. Because if a guy picks up a snake and 100 guys pick up a snake and they say that if you pick up a snake and you don't get bit, you believe in God, and 99 of them get bit and die, and the one guy lives, well, he's the one that believed in God, so, Yeah,
so there's sort of this self-reinforcing thing.
Yeah.
Hey, look, if you have any other questions for us and we didn't get to you on the line, again, we have 2 callers waiting and we're sorry we missed you. Write us, tv@atheist-community.org. is our viewer email feedback address, and that's your address to ask us questions, tv@atheist-community.org. I appreciate Andy coming on the air.
Thank you for letting me come on.
Sure, and any old time. And again, we're here every Sunday, 4:30 p.m. Until 6, and we'll be here next time, and maybe we'll talk about the Young Earth Creationist book next time, okay? Theists, donate you.